welcome to episode 337 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Julianna Ramsey.
Nash Baker.
And on today's episode, we'll be talking about movies that we saw this week in part 1. And in part 2, we will be concluding our Mads Mikkelsen series with 2015's Men in Chicken. And let me tell you, this is just a little preview for part 2. It's a way to end. It's truly just a way to end this series. So
Going out
yeah.
with a bang.
Something.
It's certainly something.
Or a squawk.
Ugh.
It's something. Well, real quickly before we start, head over to cinematary.com. We have a review from Seth Troyer of The Wanting Mayor. The what is it? He's the editor, I think, of what's his face, Upstream Color guy, asshole dude,
Wow.
his movies.
Wow.
Oh, Sam something?
Shane Carruth. Yeah, he's a piece.
Okay, well, I was
he's
in
a
the
piece of
neighborhood.
shit though. So like whatever. But his that guy's movie, The Wanting Mayor, is out. He has a review of that, and then we also have on the Patreon page a interview I did with the producer of Heart-Worn Highways, which we talked about on a previous Cinematary episode. It is getting a reissue, and it is available the same day that this episode drops on virtual cinema for Central Cinema. So you can support Central Cinema and watch Heart-Worn Highways, which is a great documentary. So you can check out my chat with the producer for that on our Patreon page. But let's go ahead. Let's jump into movies that we saw this week. I have 2 Charlie Chaplin movies that I watched this week because they've been sitting on my queue on Criterion Channel for a long time, and I felt like getting rid of them. So that's why I watched them.
What? Getting rid of them?
Not for the love of cinema, Zach? Just to get rid of them?
Isn't that what cinema really is just having a list of stuff that you have to get rid of, you know?
Yeah. To a degree. You're right.
I'm gonna put that like on a pillow and be like cinema, just getting rid of a list.
Just getting rid of things on a list.
And adding more things to it.
Yeah, and then adding more things to it, exactly.
It's the snake that you cut off one head and 2 more grow in its place.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
So the first one I wanted to talk about is the longer of the 2, and that's 1928's The Circus. And this one, Chaplin's tramp becomes a circus handyman, continuously gets fired, and then becomes the star of the show, and falls in love with the circus owner's stepdaughter, who the circus owner just, objectively is a pretty shitty dude.
Aren't all circus owners?
It's just feeding into the stereotype of just shitty circus owners, but this one, this is the second time I think it's the second time. The second time I've seen The Circus, and I think it gets a little bit overshadowed or forgotten. I think with a lot of Chaplin's features, I think City Lights and The Gold Rush, and classics like that kind of usually kind of overshine The Circus, because this one, it has its kind of plot of him being the handyman and like the star of the show, but that's very minimal. It's very much set up in the vein of like, and this is the case for most of the movies, but I think even more so with this one, it's pretty much gag to gag to gag. Like he just kind of has different bits that he goes to, and there's a central story involved, but it's very inconsequential to the different just kind of sideshow acts that he's doing throughout the film, which are all incredibly entertaining. So I'm not complaining. But this one feels much more like in line with, like a Marx Brothers movie than I think something like City Lights, which has moments that are kind of a setup gag, but also has like a through line story and a narrative involved that you're kind of following. And because of that, this one is kind of interesting just in terms of Chaplin's career. I mean, you have the tramp character is clearly the most entertaining part of like the circus, and you have like this prolonged sequence after the tramp is kind of introduced to the circus life, where he has he gets into this whole mistaken moment where a guy steals a wallet from somebody, and then the cops kind of are tipped off to him, and so in order to get them off his trail, he puts the wallet in the tramp's pocket. So then the tramp finds the wallet and is like, hell yeah, money. And you have like this whole back and forth between the robber and the tramp as the police are chasing both of them. And the police officer who's chasing the tramp, they end up like going into the circus and like getting involved in the show because they're chasing one another while the show is going on. And so the audience is incredibly bored by the typical circus acts, but when the tramp comes on and is just messing around with the police officer and like hiding in the different like acts that are happening during the show and like popping up, they're incredibly entertained by him. And so when the circus owner first hires the tramp, they have this like prolonged sequence where he's like going, this is what a circus show is supposed to look like. This is what entertains people. And you have like the circus performers doing the bits, and then Chaplin will walk out and do it and try to do the bit as the tramp. And there's always like this, there's like this kind of stiltedness to like, he can kind of see the like the lines of what he's supposed to do. Like this is the beat by beat that I'm supposed to follow, but the spontaneity of his comedy style, in that this speaks as much to Chaplin as it does the character in this movie. The spontaneity of his comedic style is what endears him to people, and so it kind of feels like it's speaking to a lot of his early films where it's not lacking in quality, but he wants to kind of have that autonomy. He wants to be able to kind of drive what he's trying to do. And so when the circus owner and the performers are trying to teach him how to do the different bits, it just doesn't align with what he's kind of doing and what aligns with what the audience wants to see, because anytime he just kind of really messes up what everybody else is doing, that's when people enjoy it, because it's just so spontaneous and entertaining. And so it feels to me kind of like it's speaking to a lot of Chaplin's early films and him kind of striving, seeing that he needed a little bit more autonomy in his films. And so if you've not seen The Circus and you like Charlie Chaplin, I would recommend it. It, like I said, it has gag after gag that are really entertaining. It has, I think the best sequence is probably is really like one of the very first ones, when the police officer is chasing the tramp, and you have this part where they go into this hall of mirrors, and you have this whole sequence in the hall of mirrors where they're like getting like turned around and twisted, and it's a really cleverly Chaplin puts the camera in such a clever way, and it's longer than you feel like it really should be. And like the length of it's one of those where it starts funny and then it kind of gets a little tiring, and then it like works itself back around to being funny, because you're just like stuck in this like mirror, this room with all these mirrors for so long. It's a really clever sequence. And then I honestly think that this movie probably, and this might be sacrilege because I know City Lights is much more revered in terms of its ending, as well as a lot of his other films, but I think The Circus probably has the best ending of a Chaplin movie, where you have like the circus kind of, you spent time with this whole cavalcade of people and performers and characters, and it just kind of shows the not only the transitory nature of entertainment and and show, but also just how easily, at one point it was just like this act that dominated the space, and then everything's cleaned up and driven away, and then the tramp is just left there with this empty room, and he like walks away, and it's like this really kind of melancholic but also kind of beautiful, because it's just like like all of these moments are all packed away into these boxes and trains and cars, and they drive away, and while the space that all of that stuff happened is empty, like it's kind of like you're going to a new place where you can kind of take part in all of this stuff once again. And so I really like the ending of this one. So if you've not seen The Circus, it's on Criterion Channel, but I'm sure it's other places that you can probably find it pretty easily as well. And so, like I said, it's kind of an underrated Chaplin. The other one I wanted to talk about is from 1918. It's one of his shorts. It's Shoulder Arms. And it's pretty straightforward. Chaplin plays this American soldier who's stationed in France during the First World War. And really the narrative, and I'm doing quotation marks, the narrative of it is that he has to go on this mission behind enemy lines to like end the war. The suicide mission, because up to that point, like when they're trying to find somebody to do the mission, he has like this moment where he captures all of these German soldiers, and of course like has this bravado and is like bragging about how he accomplished that. So they're like, oh well, you can go on this suicide mission to to try to get intel and capture the captain of the German army. And this one, it's good. It also kind of goes bit by bit. There's like this I'd say strange, but like there's this sequence where, because World War I is so dominated by the kind of the trenches and bunker warfare, and so like a lot of the first part of the movie is taking part in this trench, and they have like this bunker within the trench where the soldiers sleep. And so in the sequence, like it's been raining, and so it like floods into the bunker, and you have this sequence where Chaplin and like 3 other soldiers are like trying to sleep in this bunker, and it's like water is about halfway up in this place, where the one soldier is like, you can see his eyes and like his mustache and his mouth, and he's like breathing out of the water. And so then Chaplin does this whole bit where he's like getting ready to go to bed in this standing water, including like getting like a bell horn type thing in order to breathe, and like goes under the water and then has the bell horn to sleep, which is just I was more like watching it thinking about how deeply uncomfortable I would be if I had to like sleep the night like under standing water. And then like the rescue mission itself is pretty entertaining. They have like all of these where they're all switching places, and he's wearing the German uniform, and is pulling like a just kind of a switcheroo on him. So Shoulder Arms, it's fine. It's not one of my favorites of his short films, or it's one of his films with Edna Purvance and his brother. So yeah, it's also on Criterion Channel. It's a nice one. I think my reticence with it is just it doesn't have the gags are fun, but it's not nearly as like clever as some of his other ones. I know I forgot the name of it, but like my favorite of his early shorter ones is there's the one where he is in the department store, where they have like that whole sequence where he does like the skates, and he's like skating, and it looks like he's gonna go over the edge, which is just the best. And then he has the whole gag with the elevator. And this one is pretty straightforward. It's not, it's kind of, it's almost like Great Dictator light to a degree. So, yeah, those are both on Criterion Channel. I don't really need to give you a reason to watch a Chaplin movie. You should always be watching a Chaplin movie. So yeah. Julianna, you had a movie that you want to talk about.
Yeah, I watched Rushmore recently by Wes Anderson, and I really enjoyed it. The only other movies that I've seen by him were Moonrise Kingdom, Grand Budapest, and Isle of Dogs, which are obviously his more recent ones. Rushmore is his second movie from 1998. And I think it's my favorite of the ones that I've seen by him so far because I guess his style is like a little less strong as it is in his other movies. If you're unfamiliar, the plot is Jason Schwartzman plays a kid named Max Fisher who attends this very fancy high school, and he falls in love with like an elementary school teacher and gets in sort of this like love triangle between her and this like one of his classmates' dads, who is played by Bill Murray, which is awesome. And he's sort of a like pretentious little know-it-all, very like precocious kid, which is very, very funny. Like a good balance of kind of drama and comedy. I actually heard of this movie because I watched a clip from it for a film editing class that I took last semester, which was like there's a scene near the beginning where Bill Murray's character and Max are introduced, and it's like, that kid seems bright, you know, what does he do? And the principal is like, well, Max does all these things, and it's like a compilation of all of the clubs that he's in, and just it's so well edited and so funny of just like, you know, you see, okay, he's in this club and that, and it just goes on for incredibly long, and you're like the founder, you know, of the beekeeping club and the second alternate of this and the, you know, coach of the right, like all this kind of stuff where it just gets more and more ridiculous, and at the end it's just like perfectly punctuated by him being like, he's the worst student that we have, and so I was like, okay, well that sells it for me. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. All of the characters are like super well acted, very like lovable and interesting. And I enjoy Wes Anderson movies, but I think of the ones I've seen, like his style is obviously so iconic and so um like well known, like easy to parody almost. And so I sort of enjoyed it more in this because I feel like sometimes it can be distracting because his stuff is like it's so on the nose, and then this one it's like a little bit more restrained in all of his symmetrical shots, and it's not as pastel-y and yada yada yada. So I really liked that. I thought it was really fun. Have you both seen it?
Yes, indeed.
What are your thoughts?
Rushmore's up there for me. I prefer Wes Anderson's earlier stuff as well. Rushmore is my biography, so I'm a little biased because Wes Anderson decided to make a movie about my life. So,
Didn't you? Yeah, you tried to start a poetry club in high school, right?
Yeah, I tried to start lots of stuff in high school. I went to a schmancy high school. I was not a great student, but I did do lots of, like, I tried to start lots of clubs. Yeah, so...
Wes Anderson should write you a check for plagiarizing your life.
Yeah, no, he should.
What was your reaction when you watched Rushmore for the first time with that background?
Me?
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god, it's me. it me. Except I didn't get kicked out and sent to a public school. I would have loved it if I had, honestly. But Rushmore, I think, is so great because I think all of the reasons that Julianna states, but also I think like it doesn't, of course there's some amount of irony to Max Fisher's character, like, you know, he's that kid who's like tries to do too much and can't do some things that are important, and he thinks too much of himself probably, and blah 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 blah. But also the movie isn't cruel to him, and sort of offers validation for him as well. And so I think because of that balance, it's like, is he going to end up with the teacher? No, of course not. But is he going to be okay? Yeah. And so I think that there's a really nice balance between empathy and irony in a way that sometimes I feel gets a little imbalanced in Wes Anderson movies, or cheeky other Wes Anderson contemporaries who use that cheeky comedy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. I like Rushmore a lot, and it's one of my favorite films of his, because I think it, to your point, it merges that kind of quirky, hyper editing style that he's known for, and that when he does it, it's he has to do it in a relatively, it's either go all 100%, or has to do kind of a 50-50 thing, because there's something the Grand Budapest Hotel, which I feel is him to 100%, and I like that movie a lot. But I can also understand why people might not like it. And Rushmore seems like a nice marriage between that style that we're familiar with Wes Anderson, and, to your point, Ash, that kind of understanding the narrative very well and being able to toe that line to a degree, so it's not overmatching. There's something like Steve Zissou, which I like that movie, but it also is a little bit uneven, because it never really feels like it is very commanding of what it's wanting to portray. And the same thing with Isle of Dogs. It's kind of his most recent one. It's just all over the place, and I'm not really sure what he's trying to say. He gets kind of lost in his own sauce, and this one's a good marriage of that.
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's cool. Yeah, I think that I loved Grand Budapest Hotel, but I think that movie, and also Isle of Dogs, is sort of like Dolls in a Dollhouse, where it's all about the sets and all about the shots and da, which is nice, and I love a beautiful set and a great shot and everything. But I think there's something about Rushmore where the orderliness and things clicking together and very straightforward, this is the way it is kind of thing, reflects more of Max's character and the way that he sees the world, rather than it's a Wes Anderson movie, so it's like this. It feels like it fits the content a little bit better. Yeah.
No, I would agree. Yeah, I was honestly the Isle of Dogs is probably my least favorite of all of his movies, just because it very much was him. He just really wanted to make another stop motion animated movie, and that's fun and all.
I mean, to his defense, it's a good looking movie.
It is.
Oh yeah.
But I think you're right in that when I think about that, I often forget about that movie because it made me feel little, very little.
Yeah. And also Wes Anderson, I think, I mean, we're just getting into Wes Anderson talk at this point, but I think it was also ooh, I can use the setting aesthetic of Japan and everything as a fun set dressing for my movie, which I've heard people kind of talk about with Isle of Dogs and also Darjeeling Limited, and he's it's a movie that's all about its own aesthetic. But yeah, and so I feel Rushmore is a little bit more grounded, and I think that's why I really enjoyed it compared to his other movies, which I also really enjoyed. But, this one I was yes. And also immediately after finishing watching it, I said, wow, I could really just be Max Fisher for Halloween. Real easy.
Well,
and that would be
Ash
amazing.
clearly lived that already, so they give you
Yeah, I mean, just get yourself a screwed up bicycle and you're good to
Exactly.
go.
I got the blazer, I got the glasses, I got those big fat eyebrows. I mean, I'm 90% there.
Juliana, have you seen Bottle Rocket, his first movie?
I haven't, but I really want to.
I'd be curious to get your impression of that, because that one, I mean, it's his first movie, and it's relatively different from what like Wes Anderson is now. So I'd be curious to kind of get your.
And he did like a short film version of it, and then he made like the feature.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, huh.
While we're talking about Wes Anderson, I've just got to give my love to the Royal Tenenbaums. Royal Tenenbaums Club.
That's all. Shout out.
That's all I have to say. Shout out to Royal Tenenbaums Club.
I'm gonna do a shout out for my club is Darjeeling Limited. That one's
all right.
That's my messy favorite. Like, I know it's messy, but I like that one a lot.
Messy favorite. Honestly, I like it too.
It's pretty great.
It is. It's messy, but it good.
Right? Like I've talked to people about
She's
it,
good.
and I'm like, yeah, I get, like, they like lay out the faults, and I'm like, yeah, I know, I agree with you. I like it still.
I agree with you, but also Adrian Brody looks so good in that movie.
Adrian Brody.
I love him.
Mm-hmm.
So, now that we've finished this Wes Anderson section that I didn't realize we were going to go into,
yeah, it was inevitable.
You know, I'm looking forward to his new one, The French Dispatch, whenever the...
Oh, God, I'm not. I do not want to look at Timothy Chalamet.
You're a Timothy Chalamet hater. It's okay.
I am a hater. I will hate him until he turns 40, and then I will love him.
It's true. He just needs to get old. He's not ready yet.
Yeah. If a man, he's undercooked.
Put him back in the cellar.
I look forward to our future series where Ash is like, and that's our Timothy Chalamet. And let's look to our Timothy Chalamet confessions Twitter. We got to read this that I created. Like, that's what's gonna happen in like 10 to 20 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're still doing this when like we're all in our 60s. Hell yes, I will have a Timothy Chalamet
series.
Yeah, that will be very funny.
All right, well, we're going to take a short break, and then we will be back talking Men and Chicken after this.
Hello, Cinematary listeners. This is your favorite Filipino podcaster, Jessica Carr. I'm here to let you know about a couple of things that Cinematary offers that you might not know about. First, if you're a fan of what Cinematary is doing, please consider joining us on Patreon. Remember when we weren't clamoring for your dollars? Well, now we're just clamoring for 5 of your dollars. So please help us and donate to our Patreon, and then you'll get exclusive content from our staff, including our Film Theory and Chill series, where a panel takes a piece of theory each month and deconstructs it before diving into whatever topic is on their mind from the past week. The $5 each month is investment in the website and the podcast, and it goes solely to paying our writers for the reviews each week, so please consider doing it. It's only $5. If you missed an episode of Cinematary or a piece of writing we've had, you should consider signing up for our free newsletter. Each Sunday, we send out a note with the latest podcast episode, piece of Patreon content, and the last 2 reviews that we've written at cinematary.com. It's perfect for those of you who are interested in what's happening, and it makes sure that you don't miss a single Cinematary review. Finally, the easiest thing that you can do to help us is to please give us a rating and review on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever else you're using to listen to the show. This helps us get more eyeballs and ears on the podcast and the website, and it helps the people know about Cinematary, which is really what we're here for. So to recap, consider donating to our Patreon, sign up for the free newsletter, and give us a rating or review. We would really appreciate if you could do these things. Thank you for listening, and now back to the show.
And we are back with part 2 of episode 337 of Cinematary. In this part, we will be continuing, or concluding. Wait, we were ending it, I'm sorry. Concluding our Mads Mikkelsen series with 2015's Men in Chicken. This was written and directed by Anders Thomas Jensen, and the film stars Mads Mikkelsen, David Dinchik, Nicolaj Lee Kaas, Soren Malling, and my favorite, Nicholas Bro. After learning that they were adopted, misfit brothers Elias and Gabriel travel to a remote island in an attempt to track down their biological father. Jensen, in an interview talking about where the film came from, he said, quote, "I had 4 kids since I did my last directing effort, Adam's Apples, and it was basically watching those kids and seeing how evil we are when we come to this world. We're born with nothing. We have to learn everything from scratch. Every parent comes to understand that, but it just was a shock to me. The scene in Men in Chicken where there's a fight over the plates, each labeled with a different animal that the brothers squabble over, thinking it says something about them personally. That's literally my own kids. I just lifted the dialogue out of my own living room. I just remember one night sitting and thinking, what if we just took our 4 kids, put them on a deserted island, and said, figure it out yourself? What would happen then? That's basically where the story came from. Civilization is so thin. We have to learn everything in comparison to animals. We're really, really a fragile race and dependent on each other."
Whoa. He just threw his kids under the bus.
Yeah, right? The kids are just like, well, fuck you, Dad.
Literally, my children are animals.
On working with Mads Mikkelsen, Jensen said, "I always write something for him. I sit down and I think of him and I try to do a character for him." He added that Mikkelsen's ability to bring something unique to each role keeps surprising him. There's also an ulterior motive for their long working relationship. According to Jensen, quote, "It allows me to be a bit lazy too. When I start writing something for myself, I always have these 5, 6, 7 actors in my head, and Mads is definitely one of them." 2015, the New York Times said, "For a time, the movie feels like a cross between the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and a vintage Three Stooges short, and then there are mutated chickens." Variety said, "Every so often, a feature production lands upon a location so evocative, the spot becomes the defining characteristic of the film itself. Jensen has lucked upon just such an iconic building with Men in Chicken." And the AV Club said, "The film is grotesque and bizarre without ever really being funny, and while the sight of Mikkelsen as a nebbish loser is initially bracing, the novelty wears off fast, leaving nothing and little else." On that note,
those were some different reviews, differentiating opinions.
I tried to bounce them around,
Yeah.
So this was an interesting one to end on. So Ash, I'll be pretty blunt with you. Why did we have to watch this movie?
So I chose this movie because we had to. It wasn't an option. We had to watch an Anders Thomas Jensen movie because Mads has been in all of his feature films and is in, again, his upcoming movie, which the title of is failing me or escaping me right now. But he has another one coming out, I believe, this year, and Mads is in it as well. And so I knew we had to watch one of his movies. I wasn't sure which one. There are 4 to choose from. And I ultimately chose this one because while it's not my favorite of those 4 movies, I think it sort of captured the spirit of the Anders Thomas Jensen, Mads Mikkelsen relationship. So Anders Thomas Jensen's movies are not... So this is probably the most extreme one of his movies in the way that it's, like the review said, it's grotesque and it's strange and it's offbeat and sometimes off-putting and just plain confusing sometimes. And his other movies are not always like this. They're always a little offbeat, that's for sure. and they're always sort of about peculiar situations and people who behave in peculiar ways, or people who are put in peculiar situations. And so I felt that this one, I thought, why not go just to the nth degree of the Anders Thomas Jensen spectrum. And so I chose this one because of that, and also because I think Maz's performance is honestly amazing. It's honestly unironically one of my favorite performances from him. I think he does an amazing job in this movie. It's one of the few movies that I watch with him in it and completely forget almost immediately that it is Mads Mikkelsen. When I watch this movie, I do not see Mads Mikkelsen. I see Elias. And that is it. Like, it is not Mads Mikkelsen to me. And I think also because of that, this is a really iconic role in the Mads Mikkelsen fandom. People love Elias. People love this man. And so I felt like in comparison with like The Green Butchers or Adam's Apples or Flickering Lights, even though I really love Flickering Lights, I would recommend it to anyone who's been listening to this series and who likes Mads Mikkelsen or wants to explore more Anders Thomas Jensen or Danish film. Flickering Lights is a great movie. I think it is probably my favorite of Anders Thomas Jensen. But I felt like of those movies, this was the one, just because I think Mads' performance and the pair of Mads and Anders Thomas Jensen just come together in a particularly special way in this one.
Yeah. Mads' character, Elias, I think that, like, his performance is definitely the best part of the movie for me, because, I mean, all of the like, main characters, all of the brothers are very childish, and sometimes it's grating, and sometimes it's very kind of sweet.
Sometimes.
And sometimes. It's, there's a few kind of sweet moments. But, like, Mads is especially, because he's, like, this compulsive masturbator, and so he's, like, always, like, going to the bathroom or, like, going to a bush or, like, whatever, and he's, like, this kind of, like, creepy, leering guy where he's always talking about, like, sleeping with women and stuff. And so it's kind of difficult where you're, like, he's, like, a disgusting creep, but he's also kind of, like, a sweet, childish character at the same time, which I think, like, is a character that is very difficult to portray, because it's just, like, to have one aspect, you have to kind of forget about the other aspect of the character's personality. And Mads Mikkelsen is he's a great serious actor and a great comedic actor, so he was really good in this movie as that character.
Yeah, I mean, to Ash's point, like, he's wildly different from not only the movies that we talked about in this series, but also, like, my familiarity with him. I mean, I think one of the reviews mentions, like, just the fact, like, seeing him kind of, like, in this state is very, this is very different from, like, his Pusher 2 character, or, even, like, last week, the Royal Affair character, where, one of the things I was thinking about while watching it is we keep kind of going back to this point of, like, he really, like, has, like, this quality that, like, kind of draws you in, like, this kind of humanity to him that kind of, brings you into whatever character he is, and kind of allows you to relate to him, even in something like The Hunt, which is, dealing with, like, this kind of touchy subject. You're able to kind of side with Mads to a degree. I struggled with that on this one. I don't know if I necessarily felt that with this one. What did y'all think?
I feel like the one moment in particular that I actually like Mads' character is near the end of the movie where he kills the bull that's living in the basement, which I guess I don't know if we're touch on this, which is sort of biologically related to him.
It's his stepbrother.
And I suppose. Oh my god. This movie's insane. But he kills it. I forget exactly why. And part of the like weird childish rules that they have in the house is like he has to go and sit in the cage outside, and so he just kind of sadly like he does the thing that he knows is against the rules, and then sort of sadly goes and sits in the cage, and he's got this like very cute little curly hair, and he's got little chicken feathers sticking out, and it's kind of sweet, and you're like, aw. Go to the cage, Mads Mikkelsen.
He put himself in there.
So, like, that was, like, sort of sweet, and, like, him and the other main character, one of his brothers, like, kind of have, like, a sweet moment where they hug and, like, near the resolution of the movie. And so, like, that's, I think, like, the sweet part of the movie. The rest of it, nasty. Nasty and disgusting and weird and creepy. It was just a lot.
Well, there's just like a lot of just vulgar kind of grotesque moments, and it's not like vulgar moments where it's like it's not. I don't even necessarily think it's like trying to be like pointedly offensive. Like it's not like trying to elicit necessarily a reaction from you. It's more just like this is just the nature of the world that these guys are in, and because we're not in that world, like it's eliciting a reaction from us, which I can kind of respect to a degree, that at least it like to the point that we were talking about with Wes Anderson, like it commits to the bit. It's just like this is what it's going to be, whether you like it or not. And I think that the comparison, or the in the New York Times review that says it's like a Three Stooges sketch, I can kind of see that, because this movie seems like what a Three Stooges sketch would be like in real life, where it wouldn't end like in the audience laughing. It would just be like the skit would go on, and then it would become more dangerous, and then it would just become like completely dangerous and awful for everybody involved, until it divulged into madness. And so it feels like the purest version of Three Stooges, I guess is what I'm saying.
So for the record, I think this movie is hilarious. The first time I watched it, I was like, what is this movie? I don't know how to feel about it. I guess because when I was first watching it, I was just on this level of, I have no idea what's going to happen next. I'm interested, but I don't know what in the world is coming. And then every time, like, the next thing that happened just surprised me, and I was like, okay. And was sort of shocked, and sometimes horrified, and sometimes would nervous laugh. But I think after sitting with this movie for so long and then watching it again, I was able to see the humor in it a lot better. And so I think that, like, to your point, Zach, I found it hilarious, and I think it's such a funny movie, but the frame narrative is something that really throws me off personally, because, we get this frame narrative that's like, and this is a tale of two brothers who blah, 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 blah. And then in the end, this frame...
kind of fairy tale-esque.
Yeah, it's sort of like a fairy tale, which, on the one hand is interesting, but like it almost in the end when you after all this has happened and I'm laughing like ha 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 ha, and then in the end it's like, oh, but it all goes on and continues, and I'm like, wait what?
Yeah, at the very end, it's like the one of the brothers was gonna send the other ones off to like some kind of ambiguous mental hospital, but then ends up not, I think, in the end, and they all like kind of live together in the house, and the frame narrative is sort of like a happily ever after, like it's like soft light, and they all like have kids with the like the other people on the island, and you're just sort of like, hey, what? Huh? It's like, I don't really know if I can speak necessarily on like the politics of this film. It doesn't really strongly like, it's not really strongly like saying a particular message, but it's kind of bizarrely pro-life, where in the like end narration it's like, and every life is good, and even if they're weird, because the four brothers are created in like essentially like a science experiment where they're like crossbreeded with animals, and like their father like kills their mothers to have these kids. It's like, oh, but it's all worth it in the end because every life is precious and good. And you're just like, yeah, okay. It's a weird thing to just kind of tack on at the end after such like kind of a disturbing movie. And also I found it kind of interesting that the director was like, yes, this is kind of inspired by my kids and like the way that they squabble and everything, which I'm like, okay, I totally see that and I understand that. But it's also like, man, you wrote this movie inspired by your kids, where you imply all the brothers have sex with the chickens that run around their house? Okay.
I also want to kind of pose the question that I feel like a little bit. I don't feel like a little bit. I feel a decent amount that this movie really hates women.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yes.
I would say it's not a feminist film.
No, it doesn't have to be, but it's just like it's pretty cruel to women, the entirety of this movie.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, you mentioned like that the wives have, the mothers of these guys have died in order to like have the mutated children come out, but then also
literally they're like pickled like in the basement.
Yeah, but then also just you have the treatment of just the female characters throughout the film. You open with that scene where Mass is on that date and is just like berating this woman, and then you also have I forgot her name, but the character, the mayor of the island's daughter. Yeah, his daughter, and just like the way that pretty much everybody, just kind of completely not only just dismisses, but is like aggressively, near violent toward her. It just seems very, very hostile to any women in this movie. But Ash, you were about to say something?
Yeah. So like this, like aspect of the movie doesn't escape me. But it's also like, in addition to many other things about this movie, something that I just can't quite figure out. Because it seems to me, at least, to be somewhat intentionally placed, and if not intentional, like really tone deaf. Because, the whole bit of like, the mayor's daughter, and she's talking to her father, and he's like, well, you brought it on yourself, and she's scared that blah blah blah, and just like all this classic like anti-feminist thing, like it's almost parody. And I want to say like like the both times I've watched it, I'm like, this is parody, but like, what am I supposed to get from it? I'm not quite getting the message, and obviously, I think like Mads on his date is supposed to be like, I don't I don't think we're supposed to necessarily sympathize with him. I think it's, you know, meant to be played as a joke when he's, you know, like, you know, because he's seeing psychiatrists to get free therapy, basically. And so all of these things are placed throughout the movie, and then of course there's the stuff about the mothers and the childbearing and everything like that. But in the end, this is another reason that the frame narrative is so strange to me, is that, you know, the whole time, like, I'm thinking to myself, this mayor is a villain. You know, he doesn't care about the well-being of these men at all. He only cares about, you know, his town being on the map. And all the women in this movie are the only ones talking any sense. You know, you've got the women saying, you know, these men need help. They've got to, you know, get to a hospital or something or other. You know, you've got to let go of your pride and, like, do what's best for them, be a good mayor for once, you know, blah, blah, blah. And he doesn't listen to them, of course. And the men themselves, the brothers, don't listen to them either. And in the frame narrative, you see the mayor is there sitting with them, just happy that they have decided to stay so that his town can stay on the map. And I feel like that subplot was something that I was paying attention to a lot more closely this time around. Mostly because, like, I just can't figure it out. I'm not sure, like, what it means or what I'm supposed to gain from it. Yeah. What do you guys think about that part?
Well, it's like, I guess, you know, adding to that, it's like you also have, I mean, this isn't just something that's, you know, directed toward the female characters in the movie. It's directed toward every character, but there's such a violence. I mean, you know, like, you think of, like, the first scene where they show up at this house on this island, and it becomes like a, you know, for lack of a better word, a running gag, where they have, like, these taxidermy animals that they're, like, hitting people with. And so, like, you have...
Okay, but that's funny.
but it's like establishing, like, this like level of violence against one another, which, when it's like the brothers, okay, but, and they never like hitting any of the women, but it's just like you have, like, this degree of violence and kind of aggressiveness that is then, you know, directed in a way towards other people, and it's kind of like just this kind of chaos and aggression that, I don't know, after a while, I don't really, I guess, have a good, like, way to, like, justify it. It's just more like it grew very wary, like, I kind of got wary from it. Like, I was just, like, tired from, like, everybody just getting clocked and pushed and punched and everything after a while. Like, I was just like, just stop. And
IDK, I thought it was funny.
Like, it was kind of funny, and I remembered while you were saying, oh, edgy humor over here. But they do actually beat up one woman off screen.
They beat her off.
I mean,
That's
they
what
also
Mads
do
did.
beat off some women off screen when they're at the retirement home.
That's true.
But when they are trying to get the two of the brothers previously had a job at this elementary school on the island, and presumably they got fired because one of the kids wouldn't try some of their cheese, and so one of the characters, like, beat the child, I think is what happened. And so when they're trying to go back and get the job, they're talking to, like, I guess it's, like, the principal or the guidance counselor of the school, and and then off screen like beat her up because she's like, no, you guys are crazy, like get out of my office. And I think it's the mayor's daughter is like talking about it, where she's talking to the mayor being like, hey, like you need to get like these guys some help. They need to go off of the island to like a hospital, and it's gonna mess up your thing, but like they really need it. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure like what that whole subplot was, because in the end, in the frame narrative, like one of the brothers gets together with the mayor's daughter and has a child. Like there's a bunch of kids running around, and I'm like, well, I guess in the end, in the frame narrative, the mayor kind of gets what he wants because there's more kids and therefore more people, and the town gets to stay a town on the map because they're like, what is it, like they're one person above the threshold. There's like 41 people living on the island. So if the 3 brothers like leave, then there's not gonna be enough people. Yeah. And also there was another subplot, or like not really subplot, with the mayor where he's like, I once saw a stork with weird feet and he came down to this nest and I'm gonna see him again. And then you see him towards the end of the movie and the stork has like human feet because there's just a bunch of animals running around the island that are like weird and crossbred from like their father's crazy animal experiments. And I was like, I have no idea what he was going for with that. I mean, it's obviously storks, babies, like something to do with that, but yeah, I was that's the kind of thing about it, is that I think it was a pretty well written movie and I thought all the actors were good in it, but there was just so much of it where I'm like, this is like grabbing at something, but I'm not following.
Well, I think you yeah, and that reminded me, you hit on a good point in that there is a sequence where they beat up a woman at a kindergarten. So, that's, to the
yeah. I mean, also, like, to be fair, it's like all of the characters are awful and like that's part of the point of it, but I just, yeah, it does seem like kind of maybe a little extra cruel to the female characters, and sort of they're like nobody listening to them kind of thing. It's like a running gag almost.
Yeah, and again, I think in that more than anything, I think my trepidation with the movie is just that it just, and it's not even that long. It's like an hour and 40, but like I just got so tired of just like the because you kind of have like a point where you go a little bit in a circle of like the same thing, where they finally get to the house, they're like living in the house and they're like going over the different rules and the like, very childish like rules and guidelines that they have to follow in order to just be in this house. And at that point, that kind of calls into the comparisons to something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where you just like have like all of this like decay lying around, and you're just they spend a lot of time just kind of exploring this decaying home. But to me, it got so tiring after a while. I was so tired of like being stuck with these characters. I mean, I just felt like I guess, and that's the point. Like I felt like I was in the cage for an hour and 40 minutes because it was just like you're just stuck with these people, and they're just completely intolerable to be around, and I didn't like it.
No, Joseph though. Joseph is, I love him. Didn't you love him?
No, I didn't love anybody, Ash.
What? Joseph is so funny and good. He runs around and he eats cheese.
It's the stupidest joke.
And he says so funny things.
Is Joseph's the bigger one,
boy.
Right?
Yeah.
The mouse one, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he's so funny. I love him.
Okay, to be fair, I kind of agree with Ash. Like, the two characters, like Mass's character and this other guy, I kind of was fond of by the end of the movie. Like, they were kind of amusing, and you know, like, some of the gags I thought were funny. I did kind of, I feel like I'm in the middle of both of you, where it did kind of wear on me, but I did find it kind of funny. But it also was like, oh, like, it was kind of like groaning at a dad joke at the end when it revealed, like, oh, and he's the one that's part mouse. And he's the, like, Mads Mikkelsen character is part bull, and that's why he's, like, always jacking off. And it's like, oh, haha. And then it's like, the other character is part mouse, and that's why he loves cheese. And it's like, whoa. It's like a really bad pun, which is why I feel like I think I would have liked this movie a little bit better.
And the owl man can't sleep at night
because
because
I didn't realize
he's
that.
nocturnal.
Oh my god. I thought it was like, because he's like a professor or something of like philosophy, so it's like, he's the wise old owl. But anyway, I'm like, if that scene, like, where he had just gone down in the basement and like discovered all this stuff and whatever had happened like 40 minutes into the movie, and then like it was like, okay, we got that stupid gag out of the way, and then they could, like, I don't know, like, explore the characters in a new way, like, after this sort of revelation or whatever, I think I would have liked it more, and then I would have felt like less it was like a Scooby-Doo,
like, big reveal. Yeah.
Right, where it's like, okay, we gotta get to the house. Okay, now that we're at the house, we have to get into the upstairs to find Dad. And they find Dad, and then it's like, oh, but then we gotta go to the basement. And it's like, okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know. I think that there were, like, definitely a lot of interesting things being messed around with this movie, but it didn't all come together for me.
I'm just here for the dudes being funny and hitting each other with rolling pins.
Okay, good. I'm so glad that got it.
The sound it makes when he hits the guy in the head with the rolling pin is really funny. It really got me.
They had to have so many concussions. I mean, they got hit with so many rolling pins. And
that big pot.
Yeah.
Okay,
When he brings
that was
out the
funny.
big pot, I died. I was rolling when he brought out the big pot.
I love how straightforward your enjoyment of this movie was, where we're like, what are the themes? What's going on here?
I'm a very simple creature.
Okay. That's great.
Also, I thought the badminton scene was really great as well. When they're just all playing badminton, like, why? I think it's so funny.
I did like the detail that, like, they live in, like, this, like, grungy old asylum and everything is decaying, and yet they all had perfectly white little matching badminton doubles outfits. That was a nice touch. That was funny.
Yes. Yes. Fun fact, that is, Mads Mikkelsen has said that is his least favorite costume he's ever had to wear in a movie, because it shows off his little chicken legs.
Wow, that's beautiful.
You know, the more you know. Any final thoughts on Men and Chicken before we wrap up?
Watch Men and Chicken. Laugh at it.
I guess.
Watch it. It's funny. It's so funny.
Ash, we need a final Maz confession, though.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I'm behind on my Mads confessions. Let's talk about Mads Mikkelsen while I'm finding a confession. What do we love about Mads? Let's say our favorite thing about this series while I'm finding a good confession.
I like when he was just a sad boy who wanted his dad's love and Pusher too.
Aww.
And he didn't get it.
We didn't talk about this on the series, but his character in Bleeder, where he's just a lonely little cinephile guy and he wears nice dad hats. Love that Mads Mikkelsen moment. Also, I wasn't on the Royal Affair episode, but I did watch it, and love that sexy man. My leftist boyfriend, La Femme.
He's also going to be in an upcoming movie where he plays Communist Mass. I'm very excited. My Commie Mass fantasy's coming true. Love
that for him. I think that Mads Mikkelsen should have a ponytail more often. And yeah, so shout out to all the good, sexy Mads roles, because that's what we all deserve.
All right. So our final Mads Mikkelsen confessions, at Confessions Maz on Twitter. Can Maz stop? I just want to be a normal lesbian.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, King.
I too just want to be a normal lesbian.
Yes, King. Yes,
Don't we all
King.
just want to be a normal lesbian?
That's all anybody wants.
Yep. Wow, what a beautiful end to the series.
Thank you,
Yeah,
everyone.
I think so.
Thank you, Mass.
Ash, what is your favorite Mass moment from the series?
My favorite Mass moment from the series was getting to watch all of these beautiful movies and share them with my friends and all of these beautiful listeners.
This is the part where we all we have like a group hug and we just like hug and Mass is in the middle and that's the end.
Oh, yes.
There's this one picture, I don't know who it is, but of Mads Mikkelsen hugging a very big, large man. And I'm sure that Ash knows what I'm talking about. I know the one you're talking about. But that's all of us right now, hugging.
That's so sweet, yes.
If only I could if I could send that image to the brains of all the people listening right now, I could. But just imagine it. And that's all. What a beautiful moment we've shared.
My other favorite Mass moment that's not necessarily from the series is that he's Rihanna approved. I like that.
Exactly.
Yes, he's in... Everyone needs to go as a celebration, watch the Rihanna's Bitch Better Have My Money.
He's the bitch.
Music video.
He is the bitch.
He's the bitch.
After all, I am the bitch is one of the best things he's ever said in an interview. And he's said a lot of great things in interviews.
He says he has some great interviews. Everyone go watch a Mads Mikkelsen interview. I'm giving everyone homework.
There's so much homework after this series.
Go love Mads Mikkelsen forever.
Well, that might be asking a lot.
That's true. All right.
What? How?
All right.
All right. Well, that will.
You just have to watch Men and Chicken and Rihanna's Bitch Better Have My Money and also
an interview.
And also Your Undying Love.
Yeah, easy peasy.
That's true. It is pretty easy. All right. Well, that will wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at handle @Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we post all the movies that we talked about in this episode. I mentioned it at the top, but head over to patreon.com/Cinematary. We got an interview with the producer of Heart-Worn Highways over there. But thank you to our patrons: Cam, Chad Newsom, Christina Daughtry, Harry Eskin, Maggie, Ron Hayes, the kittiest of kittens, Titus Arthur, Tyler Chandler, and Whitney Rio Ross. Thank you so much for your patronage. Next week, we will be kicking off our next series, and we will be looking at Tilda Swinton for our next one.
Yes, Queen. Yes, Queen.
For that one, we're going to be doing Caravaggio, Orlando, Techno Lust, I Am Love, and we need to talk about Kevin. So, should be a fun one. We'll have the full schedule on cinematary.com as well. But until then, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next week.